Hi. Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, just a little bit of a preparation for tshuva, for Rosh Hashanah, for living in a world of concealment. We know that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to create the world, he removed his infinite light. He had to remove his presence in order so that there can be otherness, in order so that there can be human beings that have the ability to choose to believe in God or to live in the denial of God. There needed to be an absencing, there needed to be a removal, there needed to be a concealment, a contraction, a setting aside of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the act of the tzimtzum. The act of the tzimtzum, the initial contraction, the initial voiding of the saturation of divine light is what gives birth to existence, is what gives birth to human consciousness. What that means, and it means exactly what it sounds like it means, is that to be a human being is to always already be operating in a territory of concealment, always already be operating in a shadow where the light is no longer illuminating itself, always operating in a ruins after the building has collapsed. That is the nature of being in this world. Bana olamus umachrivam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu not only concealed himself from this world, but through that concealment, he attempts to build and destroy, build and destroy, build and destroy until we finally come to the culmination of this world that we find ourselves in, the bottom of Olam HaAsiyah, this worldliness and all of its constriction, its concealment and expansion and revelation. This is all a byproduct of the Tzimtzum, the Nakuda of this worldliness, the concealed dot of existence that so often feels like it's without eyes and without hashkacha and without perception, is the sum total of the tzimtzum. This is the purpose of the tzimtzum. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted nothing other than to dwell within the lowest place imaginable. And the lowest place imaginable is that territory in which the concealment of godliness seems to be operating with such ferocity that the only thing that we can do is have emuna in our emuna. That was the tzimtzum. And that's the creation of the world. That's how Hashem set up the playing field in which we were going to find him. But the tzaddikim give us insight. The tzaddikim give us a way of seeing through the tzimtzum. It's not a denial of the tzimtzum, but rather it's a tool to properly understand the tzimtzum. Even though the infinite light was removed, even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu abstanced himself, made a voided space in which this world can unfold, which appears to be so devoid of the animating light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu sometimes, it's not actually empty. It looks empty. It appears to be empty. It might smell empty. It might sound empty. But at the core of it, at the core, at the core, at the core of the emptiness, at the core of the absence, at the core of the tzimtzum, at the core of that halal rests an irreducible presence of divine light. That the tzimtzum, in spite of the fact that it appears to be nearly complete, is actually not complete at all, and that any absencing, any removal, any contraction, or any concealment of divine light, of divine vitality, of infinitude, which rests before, after, and at the core of all of existence, if it appears that it's gone, it's not actually gone. It has simply gone into a state of hibernation and hiding. It has escaped from the scene, but it has not removed itself from the scene. It's still there. There's an infinite light that remains. And so we now have a paradox. On the one hand, God absences himself. God creates a voided space that appears to be left on its own, God forbid. On the other hand, we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always present. It has to be such. It has to be such. For the moment that we forget about God's perpetual presence, then there's no longer any possibility of presence. So we have absence on the one hand and presence on the other hand. We have a tzimtzum on the one hand and hashgacha pratis and divine focus and presence on the other hand. How do we make shape? How do we make reason? How do we bridge this paradox of, on the one hand, living in an empty void, and on the other hand, living with a belief in the pure saturation of light and meaning? And the answer that our tzaddikim give us is the rishimu, the irreducible trace of divine light that remains after the initial tzimtzum. The tzimtzum is the contraction. It's taking all of that divine light, all of that ever-present goodness, and contracting it into a singular point. That singular blackened dot of the eye, the bas ayin, that nakuda of the Evan Hashasiyah that holds and compacts within itself such potent dosages of infinite light, in spite of the fact that it's all contained within itself, not yet revealed. This nakudas harashimu, this light of everlasting presence that remains present even after the original absence, is what we need need to uncover in this world. There is a trace. There is always a trace. There is always an infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that remains in the scene even after its departure. And it's in moments where we feel the departure and we feel the tzimtzum so intensely, it's specifically there that there's a revelation of the trace with even more intensity. The entirety of Rosh Hashanah, the entirety of Tshuva is bringing us into this recognition. Hashem created a world of concealment. Bekesa liyom chagenu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to reveal himself and be crowned within a territory of constriction, concealment, and apparent darkness. And it's specifically in that place, it's specifically in that place of the absence, in that place of the apparent disavowal of divine presence that we are forced to remember that there is divine presence here. The act of memory, Yom HaZikaron, is exactly this. When I know something, when I have a piece of information in my mind, it's very much alive. When I know of God's presence, it's alive in my mind. But then when the knowledge of God's presence departs from me and God is far from me, so it appears that that feeling and that connectivity to godliness has died and it has gone away. It's forgotten. It's no longer present. That which was there is gone. It's forgotten like the dead from the heart. The secret of memory is awakening the irreducible traces of that piece of information that continuously remains embedded within the very fabric of the mind, underneath conscious perception. Memory is when I retrieve and I recollect all of those pieces of information that were once present in my mind that are now absent, and I remember that, if I thought them once, then they're still there, and I come to remember. Zoicher kol hanishkachos. Everything is forgotten and then everything is remembered. Everything is empty and then everything is refilled, and that refilling is the revelation that it was never actually empty to begin with. That achein ata kel mistater, that hastara, that concealment of godliness, the forgetfulness that descends upon the world, the death of the year, the death of hope, the death of connectivity, all of these things that appear to be removed from the scene are all there for us to gaze at it, to lean deeply, deeply, deeply into it, beyond appearances, beyond those first notions that push back against the possibility of hope, deeper and deeper and deeper into the oimek tachas, into the abysmal depths of this worldly existence, so that we can come to uncover the nekudas harishim, the irreducible trace of godliness that has always already been there, and it just rests on the lock and key of the Nakudas Harashimu and that Nakuda of Tzimtzum. And when we gaze our eyes on it, we open it up, and the world is flushed again with infinite light. The mind is flushed again with infinite light. That which was absent is filled, that which was forgotten is remembered, and light comes back into the mind. A subtle light, a humble light, a light that understands that the revelation of God is not in contradistinction to the concealment of God, but rather it emerges from within the concealment of God itself. There's no other choice. There's no other choice than to look at this world with all of its broken vessels and all of its broken moments and all of its concealment and all of the various elements and the angles in which it appears that God is so absent from the natural presence that we have to dig down deep to uncover the Nekudas Harashimu and to remember that Hashem is everywhere. Hashem is everywhere. Zoicher kol hanishkachos. The entire notion of Rosh Hashanah is the return of the trace back to the original presence that was there prior to the departure. Rosh Hashanah is entering into a chamber of forgetfulness, entering into a chamber of absence, entering into a place of Bekesa liyom chagenu, the black dot of the void, the black voided dot of the mind that's so overwhelmed when it encounters concealment in this world. And it's there that we have to enter into the Yom HaZikaron, to awaken that which has been forgotten, to draw life back into that which has died, to bring hope back into those territories of hopelessness, to bring strength back into those territories of weakness, to revive the lost hope of what we had for the year, to revive those struggles that we've experienced, and to bring life back into it, to breathe deeply, to fill the void, to refill the void with the light of meaningfulness that has always already been there. It appears so often that there's emptiness, and according to the das of the tzaddikim, there were certain tzaddikim who saw emptiness. There were certain tzaddikim in Chazal that this person doesn't have a chelik in olam haba. This person might not be able to actually uncover the light that was there. But then comes along the Dorshe Rishumos, those who search out the irreducible trace of things, and they say, no, we're going to dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper through the layers of concealment, through the layers of thickness that blot out the divine processes in this world, and we're going to break on through to the other side, and we're going to believe with a stubborn faith, and we're going to radically believe in our capacity to be Moser Nefesh for a stubborn faith that says, in spite of all appearances, in spite of all concealment, in spite of the void, nevertheless, Alufa Shel Olam is nimtza. And in the moment that a person connects themselves to the alufa shel olam, to the memory of divine presence, to that nekudas harashimu, to the revelation that tzimtzum itself is just a furthering of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's revelation, and that the capacity to find strength and courage within the concealment itself is the gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives to us. Achen ata kel mistater, we uncover more and more light. We become the dorshe reshumos that say even those who have no chelak in olam haba, they have a chelak in olam haba. Zocher kol hanishkachos, everything that was forgotten is going to come back to life. Everything, every pocket of hopelessness, every pocket of fear, every pocket of discomfort is going to be filled with warmth and comfort and illumination when HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes back and returns to us and he says, I know that you've been seeking me out. I know that it appears to be a halal. I know it appears to be a real void. I know it appears that Tzimtzum is Kipshuto. But you were Dorshe Reshumos. You sought out the trace. You refused to believe that Tzimtzum was Kipshuto. You refused to give up hope. You refused to allow yourself to fall into that depth of slumber where a person forgets their neshama, to awaken ourselves to the dream, to the dreams of Yosef Atzadik. The dream is the irreducible trace of the neshama that continues to pulsate within the depths of the mind, even when every part of the self feels so unconscious. To dream is to awaken and to revive those irreducible lights that rest embedded within the fabric that they were there beforehand. Nothing is ever gone, nothing is gone, nothing is revealed. Only light, there's only the Rishimu. And this comes about by way of us looking at the world and saying, Rabbeinu Shalom, where are you? Ayim Mekom Kavodo. When a person finds themselves in empty vessels, when a person finds themselves in the Halal Panui, it's at that point that we are becoming aware of the fact that Hashem, you are hidden here. And with the developing perception and awareness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's absence, our heart begins to question and it begins to search out after God's presence. And it's that very searching out and that searching and that yearning and that demanding and that desire for what we know not what, that awakens and it builds the kli, it begins to build the vessel, the desire for godly presence that we never even experienced, but we know intuitively is here and are willing to believe beyond belief that it's here. That awakening is the building of the vessel itself. It's the hakika in the lave. It's the engraving within the heart. It's the back and forth process of where are you, Hashem? I don't see you, Hashem, but where are you, Hashem? I don't see you, Hashem, but where are you, Hashem? And in the back and forth of this developmental process of the heart at war with itself to spark a certain element of a hitznoitzitz hamachshava, a hir tshuva, to return back to a place of concealment and say, Hashem, I can't live another second without you. I can't live another second in this halal panui, in this place of devoid and deficient realities. I need you, Hashem. And in that place, the kav or in sof emerges again, and the rishimu is revealed, and all of the concealment is flooded with revelation. It's the mumbling and the rumbling and the murmuring and the fear and that anticipatory dread that we feel when we see a halal and we say, Hashem, where are you? That awakening, that drisha achar the roshem. This is Yosef who's yotzim mibesa asurim. Sfas lo yadata eshma. We lost our language, but on Rosh Hashanah, we remember our language. We remember all that has been forgotten by way of yearning towards memory, by way of trying to awaken something that feels like an empty void, that something that feels like an empty kli. We can't run away from this feeling. We have to lean into this feeling. We have to become the dorshe reshumos. And in this drisha, we say, Hashem, you're here. No matter what, you're here. We know you did it tzimtzum, gevalt, gevalt. That tzimtzum is a paradox, and it's this type of paradox, and it's all of the hadin kamsa de levushim in all of the fancy teachings that we can say about the tzimtzum, but besof davar, we look through it. We look through the tzimtzum and we say, Achen ata kel mistater ad masai. Reveal yourself, Rabbeinu Shalom. Reveal yourself, Rabbeinu Shalom, by way of the dorshe reshumos, the Talmidim of David Malka Mashiach, who refused to give up hope on the presence of godliness in the world, who refused to give in to the nature of the halal, who refused to say that it's something dead, but continuously demand to breathe life back into it, to transform the halal into chayim. It's the gematria of halal and chayim is the same. To be the dorshe reshumos, to awaken ourselves with the light of Reb Tzadok, who says as follows: the nature of someone who searches after the trace, the nature of someone who's dorish after the roshem, meaning it's a person who has the capacity to grasp that which is not revealed completely in this world, and all that exists is a trace. All that exists is a trace. Because on a surface level, very often it appears that we can't see anything, and that it's only within the depths that we come to understand that which we can't understand. What the tzaddikim promised us is there. That what's going to be revealed to us is that which the eye has never laid eyes on. And from within the depths of concealment, within the depths, we're going to come to a certain element of a trace of godliness. And when we search out those traces, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to continue to reveal himself more and more to us. But to be the Mari de Chushbina, to be the Dorshe Rishumos, means to be someone who's looking around and says, Hashem, where are you? I'm Dorish you, Hashem. I know there's a Rishimus Hadavar here. There's something alive. Tzadik hayotzim and ir nasaroisham. And when we draw that original presence back into the traces of the concealment of that presence, we illuminate the trace with that which was here before, in spite of the fact that we don't know where it is. Listen to the words of Rav Tzadok here. The nature of tzimtzum in this world, the nature of God's concealment, is to conceal and limit himself. It's not that it's not there. It's not that the thing is not there. It's just that the thing is measured. It's measured and contained. But the fact is that originally it wasn't measured. Originally, the light of Hashem was fully present. And now that it's measured, it's as if it's gone. But, says Rav Tzadok, every place that there was once a light, every place where there was once calmness, every place where there was once illumination, there remains an irreducible trace by way of the righteous one who leaves. And as a result of his leaving, his absence is noted as a result of the trace that he leaves. That it becomes clear that there's a deficiency. It's not just absence, there's an awareness of the absence. This would not be the case if that light was never there. If the light was never there, there would be no awareness of the absence of that light. So too when it comes to grasping godliness in this world. That God revealed himself originally, and then he concealed himself. But because of God's original revelation, there remains an irreducible trace that we're trying to uncover, an irreducible searching out something that we don't know what. We're hungry, we're thirsty, we're yearning. Tzamul chanafshi. We know that we're yearning for you, Hashem. We don't know what we're yearning for because we've never tasted the real thing. All we know is the trace of it. But we know that it's not here. And as a result of knowing that it's not here, it reveals to us that we're aware that there's a trace of something that was once here. That it's clear to us in this valley of shattered vessels that there's a deficiency, there's something missing. The light of godliness is missing from here. The grasp of godliness is missing from here. And as a result of becoming aware of the lack of our ability to grasp godliness, we also lean into the truth of the matter is that there is such a thing as godliness. And it turns out that the grasp of the nature of godliness from within the shattered vessels of this world comes about specifically by way of our encounter and our recognition that it's missing in this world. And this is the secret of the sparks of light that remain hidden in exile, within concealment in this world. And the job of the Jewish individual and the job of the mind, which is to retrieve them and to reveal them again. Meaning to say it specifically by way of the descent into these broken vessels which emanate from the capacity of God's concealment and the entirety of the concealment of this world from the light of godliness. But to come to realize that it's not absence, it's just contained and contracted within, and that when I become aware that there's a trace of that light, I also become aware that it's not here. And I begin to moan and to groan over the absence of God. Because through this irreducible trace of godliness, which is the awareness that it's not here and the frustration that it's not here, because I know Hashem should be here, but I also know that it's hidden from me now, at least as a result of my bitterness over the fact that it's missing, I've already begun to develop a relationship with God. And it's from within this trace that is emergence from within the absence of godliness, this concealment, that when a person stares at it and begins to contemplate it within their heart and begins to feel the embitteredness that emerges from this absence, to the degree that in the bitterness, through the digging down into the bitterness itself over the absence of God, we come to discover God. We come to discover the revelation of God from within the questioning spirit itself, each and every person according to the conjecture and the measure of their own heart, from within the profound levels of concealment. When a person places their heart upon it and they say, it shouldn't be this way, this is not why the world was created, for such concealment. At that point, we come to the deep recognition that everything has to bespeak the glory of God, everything, even the apparent absence. And we find ourselves emerging from concealment into revelation. And this is the ascendancy that we draw ourselves up from concealment itself. This is restoring content, meaning, fullness, breath into the externalized traces and engravings of this world. Right now, we are Dorshe Rishumos. Va'aviv shamar esadavar, memory, guarding something, is when I know there's something that's meant to be here, but I don't know where it is, and I don't know how it is, and I don't know what it is, but I consistently and perpetually lean into the belief that it's there and it's going to be found. And it's the Dorshe Rishumos who are going to merit to see the return of that light of the full experience into the externalized traces. This is the work of Rosh Hashanah, this is the work of Tshuva, this is the work of gathering up all of the broken things, all of the hidden places, all of the darkness, all of the sadness, all of the fear, all of the hopelessness, all of the tzabrachenkite, and saying these are kalim that are going to become receptacles of light. These are kalim that are going to reveal such potent forms of light. It's not that the light is going to come down into these kalim. It's the light is in the kalim themselves. The kalim are the light. The job is to descend down into the kli, to descend down, down, down into the tzimtzum itself, and to dig down deep enough to come to the irreducible center of it all, which is Or Ein Soif Mamish, the never-ending, infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that was never actually mitzamsim itself. That just as it was before the creation of the world, just as it was when HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvaydo v'atzmo kavyachol existed in absolute isolation by dint of the infinite nature of itself, and there was the potentiality towards being prior to the tzimtzum, it's still that way. It's still that way. The entire Shis Alfei Shanan Dehave Alma, the entire arch of history is still one blip on the radar of Ki'ilu Yatsa, as if it left, and we're still digging into the Rishimu. We're still digging into the Rishimu in search of the Aveda, in search of that which is lost from the trace. The Suda of the Lavyasan that Tzaddikim say is the return of the fullness into the trace itself, where the irreducible remainder, the empty vapors of light that we're trying to breathe in to gain koach in this world, to gain capacity to face this world, are going to be filled, they're going to be saturated with a Suda, they're going to be filled with the fullness that Ayin Lo Ra'asa Elikim Zulasecha. B'Rosh Hashanah Yod Seif Yatsa Mibeis Ha'asurim. The fullness of experience, the Yesoid, the Tzaddik, the light of saturation is going to fill Malchus. It's going to reveal that all of the emptiness, all of the Halal, all of the Halalim, all of the brokenness, all of the concealment, all of the emptiness is ultimately the place from which the call of the shofar emanates from. Mima'amakim Krasicha Hashem, digging down deep into the concealment, the Oimek Tachas, the broken world that we live in very often, the concealment upon concealment, the Choshech HaKafulu Mechupal, the darkness that's doubled over itself, the belly of the snake, the Hastara Shabbatoicha Hastara. Each and every element of these kalim are going to be transformed into mountains of light, revelation after revelation after revelation, nechama after nechama after nechama, redemption after redemption after redemption, tshuva after tshuva after tshuva. But we have to hold cup, we have to hold on, we have to be like Yaakov Avinu, Va'aviv Shamar es hadavar, Shamar is Osios Roshem, because we wait patiently when we know that there's an irreducible trace that's meant to be revealed. And we have to bring this to Hashem in tefillah. We have to say, Hashem, Aye Mekom Kavodo. Where are you? Fill that roshim of my life. Fill that roshim of my heart. Fill that roshim in Klal Yisrael. Fill that roshim in the halal. Fill that roshim that's in a state of fear, and illuminate yourself. Illuminate the world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Reveal your light. When we hold the absence, when we hold the concealment, and we allow it to become that point in which we behold HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light, we become the Dorshe Rishumos. We become those who are going to be koilel everything back into Kedusha. Nothing outside of Kedusha. There's no kli, there's no concealment that's not going to be nichlal within the fundamental unity that's going to be revealed. How, why, where, and which way, that's already questions of malifnim, mala achor. We don't know anything, we didn't know anything, we don't know anything, and we won't know anything. All we know is Hesach Hadas. All we know is Hesach Hadas, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should send down his light by Hesach Hadas, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should send Mashiach, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should send Nechama and Zikaron, and should send the illumination of the Lavyasan and the Suda of the Lavyasan and Moshe and Mashiach, who are going to come to restore the fullness into the externalized trace of the moment itself, Be'ezras Hashem.